Welcome everyone, and hello. Thank you for joining us for the second webinar in support of the National Missing Persons Hackathon 2020, being delivered in partnership with AustCyber, Australian Federal Police's National Missing Coordination Centre and Trace Labs. Our session last week, our webinar last week, proved very successful, so thank you for attending. We've decided to do it all over again for you. Today's webinar could not have been produced if it wasn't for the assistance of our national sponsors, Telstra and CommBank. So thank you to Telstra and CommBank for supporting our next generation of cyber professionals. So today's discussion will continue in the open source intelligence environment, but we're actually going to be looking at it from a different lens. We'll be talking to the Trace Labs team, and we'll also be talking to the 2019 national winners of the National Missing Persons Hackathon last year, Team Saab AU. So without further ado, I will introduce our teams and our panelists for you. As I mentioned, Trace Labs team, we have three of the Trace Labs team members. Sorry, it's early in the morning. Three of our team members here from Trace Labs. I'd like to introduce to you President and Founder of Trace Labs, Robert Sell. Hello, Robert, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Love to have you. Adrian Korn, Director of OSINT Operations and Strategy. Welcome, Adrian.
Thanks, Linda. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. And we also have Director Technical Operations, James Liolios. Hello, James.
Hi, Linda. Thanks for having us on.
No, great to have you guys on, and coming all the way online virtually from Canada, which I believe is 7 p.m. Tuesday evening, your time.
That's correct. Yeah.
Fabulous. And we also have Team Saab AU. As mentioned, they were the national winners of the 2019 National Missing Persons Hackathon. So I would love to introduce to you Adam, Ben, Luke, and Andrew. Hello, gentlemen.
Morning, Linda.
Hi.
Fabulous to have you. Just be prepared. I have a lot of questions for you. I'm sure that our participants for this year will want to be gaining as much insight and experience from you to better place themselves for this year. Look, we'll start off with the first question to Trace Labs. So Rob, if I can start with you. I'm sure that you've probably been asked this question hundreds of times, but could you give us an insight as to how Trace Labs was established and how this mission came about?
Sure, yeah. I have been asked that a few times. I love answering it though, actually, because it talks about our journey. And there's two main concepts that I really want to talk about. One is the modernization of how we look for missing persons. And that's really been the problem that we're trying to solve. And then the other component of that, which I want to talk about, is the utilization of existing effort. And so there are two concepts that have been combined to make Trace Labs. So the first one, modernizing the way we look for missing persons. Having been in search and rescue for over a decade, I know how we look for missing persons. I go out looking for people. And you've heard me say this before, that when I'm out looking for people, I'm often thinking about the mission that I'm looking for that person, but I'm also thinking about all the other people that are missing that I'm not looking for. And I think that's a part of the problem, right? So being missing is not necessarily a crime. So it's not necessarily resourced at a high priority, which is not something we would disagree with per se, but it does create a gap. So how do we fill that gap? And how do we scale, essentially, right? So how do you get the resources to go out there and look for all those people that are missing and try to help with that situation? And then also, if you look at the people that are going out there looking for people, it's very regional. So how do you solve it at a global perspective? Because the problem is actually global. Somebody could go missing from where I am, and they could end up where you are. So how do we correlate that? If the person is perhaps deceased or changed their name or anything like that, how do we link that together? And so I think that's the other challenge. So for Trace Labs, one of our a part of our mission has always been to be global, to try to help with that problem. So moving on to the second component of that is utilizing existing efforts. So I've been pretty lucky over the last few years to travel the world, go to cities like Paris and countries like Poland and Canada and the US and see CTFs, capture the flag events that are taking place, and see these individuals that roll into the event and they've got a big screen monitor under one arm and a 6-pack of Red Bull under the other arm, right? And you look at them and in their eyes, they've got all this passion and excitement and they're going in there and they're on mission, right? And nothing's going to stop them. They're going to be there all night. And I was looking at that, and that's when kind of the light bulb went off, because what I saw in their eyes was the same thing that I see in search and rescue people. When we're called out in the middle of the night, we're going up this hill, it's pouring down rain, it's freezing cold, and you look over at your team members and they're smiling and they've got this stupid grin, right? Because they're having fun and they know it's another 3 hours to the top of the hill, but they don't care. And it's this weird phenomenon, right? Where you're going to go all night on the CTF and you're going to work all night and you're having a lot of fun. So that was the solution to the problem, right? Where taking that energy, taking everybody's energy that they're spending on that event and turning it into helping find missing persons. So that was kind of the how it kicked off. But then looking at other components around that time frame, the Tyler Wright search was a good example, that biggest search in BC history, where they were crowdsourcing the video footage for that search from the helicopter, which was really neat. It was kind of a new concept. And then looking at how we use emergent volunteers. So in the SAR world, you can't really use emergent volunteers from the public very well because they're going to go out and maybe get lost or hurt themselves. So it's very hard to do that. So how do you do that safely and utilize that resource, right? So we're able to do that with TraceLab. So I thought that was another part of our mission that we wanted to mix in. And then also getting the input and advice from hackers in our community. And I say the word hackers, it's not the people you see on TV with the gray hoodie, right? It's people that think about traditional problems and bring in creative solutions. So consulting with them and getting their input. And we did that for the first little while. And that's really where I met James and Adrian, right? Because that's what they are. They're very creative people that think about things in unique ways. And I think it was almost like destiny bumping into Adrian and James at one of these conferences, because a lot of people have ideas, and that's what this was at that time. But what you need is people that can take an idea and move it into an actual functioning organization and then help build a community around it. And I've got lots of ideas. Everybody has lots of good ideas, but to have talented individuals that can help push this forward. And that's what we did. And I think a lot of people see the success that we have today, which is great. Our community is growing, our events sell out. It's tremendous what we're doing for this global problem. But what people don't see is the last 3 years of work that we did and that they did, right? And the weekends, the evenings, the personal bills, the time away from family, all that. So yeah, so that's our journey. That's how TraceLab started. So does that answer your question?
No, of course.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
fabulous. I have to say,
I got rambling there a little bit.
No.
I get pretty excited about it.
No, look, as do I. You know, you spoke about seeing people walk into the room with a mission, and you see that the passion that they have, and, you know,
Yeah.
the event last year, and we held it in person, which it was fabulous to have the TraceLabs team there with us last year. Seeing the buzz in the room of 100 odd participants at the Canberra location, another 250 around the country, is you see them walk in with a mission. You see them concentrate 6 hours, and it's an extremely, you know, noble event and unique platform that you guys have brought about. So that's. And they want to keep going after that, right? After the event is over, you see people saying, okay, what's next? You know, and they want to take it offline and keep searching. So the excitement there, the passion is there, which is very exciting. Yeah, exactly right. Because there is a possible tangible outcome at the end that we relate to as humans. Adrian, before I move On to you, team. Can I just get the first poll up, please? Just for the audience, if you could engage with us, that would be fantastic in regards to whether you have participated in a Trace Labs Search Party CTF. So Adrian, we were just talking about the passion and the commitment of people, and it's evident that you actually have this as part of your community. What do you think is it that captures that passion and wanting to continue to help with your mission?
That's a really great question, Linda. I think it really comes down to three things. So when people want to volunteer, they usually want to help make a difference. They want to learn, and then they want to do something fun and cool, something they can, talk about amongst their family and friends to really show they're making a difference in the world or in the community. So really the whole reason why we've gamified this Trace Labs model, kind of bringing together a CTF and search and rescue and OSINT, is to really motivate all these volunteers who have the hacker skill sets or the investigative background to really find these new and unique leads online just using open source intelligence. So you see a lot of other volunteer efforts out there in the world, and even not related to missing persons. For example, there's Doctors Without Borders, and you can have a licensed doctor go and volunteer and make a difference in the world by going to provide their medical expertise free of charge to people in underprivileged countries. When you look at the security community and everyone with these skill sets, really before we came up with Trace Labs, we didn't really see a lot of initiatives out there where someone could really make a difference on a global scale using just their cybersecurity skills. So what we see a lot when we run one of our search party events is people will hear about it for the first time and say, hold on, I can actually use my cybersecurity skills to help find missing people, do some social good, help law enforcement, help the families of these missing people and their loved ones. It's truly an impactful mission and something that everyone can get behind. And that's really why we've seen such a large following and success with our model, where at our monthly global events that we run, which are virtual, open to the whole world, we get at least 600 people participating in them. And it's not just 600 people looking for the missing people. We also have typically another 100 additional volunteers who are actually verifying all this crowdsourced OSINT in real time that these people are submitting. So really, you don't need to have the cybersecurity skill set and experience investigating things. You can just come in and help to verify all this info in our search party events. So really, anyone out there in the world who's ever done a Google search or opened up Facebook or any social media platform can really get involved and help make a difference. And I think that's really why we've attracted so many people on a global scale to contribute to this mission.
No, exactly right. And I think that's been part of the success here as well, in the sense of it's like people ask, do I need a technical background? It's like, no, if you've opened up Facebook, if you've actually looked for your long lost friend, or you've looked for, your old high school friends, we all have that skill. And one of the benefits of this year's National Missing Persons Hackathon is through our sponsorship with OSINT Combine, where all of our participants receive free foundational training in OSINT skills. So we're hoping that this year we can not only upskill our participants, but also have a greater impact to your mission as well. So Adrian, could you just run us through what participating in a CTF looks like? What is actually the process of it?
Yeah, absolutely, Linda. So really, to start to every search party event that we have is you have to form a team to get started. Now, we do have some people prefer to work in like a team, which is in our events up to 4 people. We also have some people who like to participate solo, which is also fine. But usually we see people form a team to start. Then they will kind of sync up before one of our search party events to kind of get to know each other, exchange resources, come up with really a game plan of how they're gonna, investigate these missing persons cases. And something we actually don't do before one of our events is we don't publish which specific cases people are going to work on. So everyone who comes into an event is given a brand new case to work on that they didn't know about before that was going to be a part of that event. They're kept under embargo. And then essentially when we start the clock on one of our search parties, it'll be about a 6-hour effort on average. And what people do is they look at these cases to start. They see where are they from, what are the disappearance details, you know, how did that person go missing if the police have some idea of that. They'll typically share that. And then what they'll start to do from there, the participants, is they will actually look at our different what we call flag categories. So in a typical capture the flag event in the cybersecurity community, there's different flags that people would look to find on, let's say, vulnerable servers to try to test out their hacking skills. But in a search party CTF, we're actually looking at flag categories of real pieces of information that law enforcement is looking for in an active investigation. So things like social media profiles, a phone number of someone, any recent activity from that individual, information on their family and friends. It really ranges in a whole variety. And essentially the way we've structured our categories is the harder it is to find a piece of information, the more points that person is going to get in the CTF. And I do say that we have points associated to these flags, but really that isn't the single motivating factor behind our CTFs. Actually, when we started, we just had, you know, the point categories, and we had first, second, and third place teams that we would rank people against. But something new we actually introduced recently was the concept of a most valuable OSINT award that we started giving out to people who submitted the single best piece of OSINT that we saw in that event. So now it became more of not just trying to get the points, but trying to find the most valuable piece of OSINT that's going to help law enforcement reopen a cold case or maybe close an existing case. That's really what we've been looking for out of our events. And essentially, with each piece of OSINT that we're getting in the CTF, I think I mentioned before, we do have an additional volunteer judge team, we call them, where they're actually looking at each piece of OSINT in real time. They're verifying that it's accurate, has a proper source material that we can use to recreate that piece of OSINT on our end. And one of the key parts to that is having a public link associated with that. So when we talk about open source intelligence, we mean anything that's publicly available on the internet. Anything that I can go and view without having any special access, any, you know, special database accounts, anything like that. It has to all be publicly available. And by us only doing OSINT, being also passive recon, we're not going beyond any gray areas or black areas to go against the scope of our mission. So because we only look for OSINT, we're not going to interfere in any active criminal case that law enforcement is looking to. We're not going to notify the missing people or their families or loved ones that we're looking into them. It's all strictly passive, kind of, you know, look at what's out there, but don't touch anything and don't let anyone know you're looking. So really at that core, that's how our search parties are structured there.
Great, and I think that's a really important point that you've made, Adrian, in the sense of it is all passive, illegal activity or requiring access to get into databases, paying for information or paying to get to that information is not part of what you're looking for or part of what the participants are required to do. This is all above board legal activity for open source information on missing person cases. So that's a great point to make. Team, can we pop up the results for our first poll in relation to whether people have participated on a Trace Labs search party? 85% haven't, 15% have. So that's a really great spread of a significant amount of people that haven't. I'm really, really hopeful that those that are in the audience today will actually be part of the National Missing Persons Hackathon in a couple of weeks. James, we were just talking about skills and experience, and you have, a volunteer set, you have participants that all help Trace Labs with their mission. Can I assume that you're not obviously looking for that technical experience, you're looking for a diverse range of skills and experience to be part of your mission?
Yeah, absolutely, Linda. So I was going to say, similar to what Adrian kind of just alluded to earlier, we get this question a lot at Trace Labs, and the way that we kind of answer it usually is, can you perform a Google search? Have you searched for somebody on social media before in the past? If you have done either one of those two things, you have everything that you need to get started with one of our search party CTFs. Now, that's not to say that obviously there are much more advanced OSINT techniques that are involved in the process, but that is why we partner with the great people over at OSINT Combine. And what they've done is they've created beginner training modules that all members of the National Missing Persons Hackathon will have access to kind of level up their skills in a theoretical way. And then they will be able to now take those skill sets and apply them practically in the hackathon that we're going to be conducting here. So normally we get a lot of people that ask us this type of question. They're very what's the word, they're nervous, or they're just like, I don't have the technical skills to get involved with this sort of thing. I'm not smart enough, I'm not in cyber. And what we try to say is, well, have you ever looked for an old friend on Facebook, or have you ever done a Google search to try and find some more information about somebody? And if yes, then you have everything that you need to get started. We have a great community of people that will take you in to their teams and help you get started and get you leveled up to the more advanced OSINT techniques. But don't think, I guess what I would like to say is, don't think that you don't have anything to offer, because just having you there with those types of abilities is enough to get started for sure.
Oh, that's great, James. Yeah, and very, very encouraging for those participants who haven't been part of Trace Labs Search Party CTF or part of the National Missing Persons Hackathon. It's all about the mission at the end of the day, and having everyone participate just enables us to be able to generate new leads for law enforcement on missing person cases. Thanks, James. Adrian, what have been some of the most memorable standout submissions that you've seen come through with those teams participating in one of your CTFs?
Oh, there's so many I could talk about, Linda. We've actually worked on over 320 cases, I'd say, in Trace Labs history. And I guess the ones that stand out the most to me when I think about our most valuable submissions we've had in the past, the first one I guess I would talk about is one we saw last year in 2019 at B-Sides Toronto conference, actually. We had this one missing persons case. The man who went missing actually went missing back in about 2017. The case had gone cold. Law enforcement couldn't find any new leads on this. They gave it to us and they asked if we could help. So we published that case to our B-Sides Toronto search party event. And we had this one contestant who managed to find this YouTube account for one of the friends of the missing person. And going through each of the videos there, and mind you, there was a lot of them to look through. He went through probably about an hour or so of YouTube video footage, and he was able to stop on this one video where he saw a video of the friend in a truck driving in the video, and then he could actually see, if he stopped at the right frame, that the missing person was actually seen getting into that vehicle. And this was after that person was reported missing, I should add. So this was definitely a new lead. And what was really the most valuable part about this lead is that the license plate for that vehicle was showing in the video. So what we actually did is we took that license plate, we gave it to our law enforcement contact on the spot. They were actually there in the room with us, and they called it in. They got a new address right off that plate number. And they were able to trace that and actually locate that missing person at that address. They sent a squad car probably within an hour to check out the address. They talked to the neighbors, and then within a few days, they were able to confirm that that missing person was at that location. And because of just that one person looking at all those hours of the YouTube video footage, we were able to help them close a case that they hadn't closed in 2 years. That was probably one of our most valuable leads. We've had other examples as well where a contestant of ours will find an alias of the missing person that's linked to a new social media account. So this is what you'll probably see often in teenage missing persons cases. You'll have a teenager and they'll have their main social media account that all their family has and they know of. And then sometimes you'll have a secondary one, which only their close friends will see. And then sometimes you'll have a third account even that maybe they have for whatever other reason. So we've had a lot of success with those where our contestants will trace old usernames to those type of accounts, and they'll be able to find recent activity from those missing people after they were reported missing. And we've had a lot of successes in these where we'll provide that information to our law enforcement contacts, and now they can actually check off on their list to know that that missing person is still alive. Because in some cases, they're wondering, are they still alive? Are they out there somewhere? Or was there foul play involved? So right there, giving those leads, they're able to know that. Then further there, we have some contestants who will actually look at that recent activity and start to geolocate images. And this is actually something we saw in our last event in September. One of the contestants actually geolocated the specific area that a missing person was in from one of their photos. I think they took a photo in a nearby McDonald's in the Toronto area. And using the things around the background, they were able to figure out exactly which McDonald's location that was. And now we had a recently known location for that missing person within probably a week of that event. So we were able to provide that to law enforcement. There's probably 10 more leads I could talk about that we've gotten in past events, but those would probably be the most memorable I'd bring up right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you remember last year at the hackathon, I think it was towards the end, Trish Halligan from the National Missing Persons Coordination Centre recounted this on AustCyber's AustCyber Unlocked podcast, where there was a possibility that one of the teams had found an additional account, I think it might have been a Facebook account of one of the missing persons cases. And there for a second, as you were going through verifying that information, there for a second we thought that we may have found someone, and it was actually having that case officer there to confirm that no, they were aware of it. It was under a secondary name, but it wasn't the person that we were looking for. So I can just you recounting those stories, I can just imagine the feeling in the room and the environment and the buzz that created amongst the participants.
Absolutely. I remember that moment very well. I remember calling over Trish and the AFP team to come and take a look. We were looking through their profiles, and then they're just like, oh, okay, we know about this one, but everyone was very excited for a moment. And it was definitely a good lead. If they didn't know about that account, that would have been an example of an important lead.
Yeah, exactly right. Look, we've had a couple of questions that pop up here from a practical sense. One of the questions that we've got is that seeing that not all team members know each other, because we are doing this via online, if a team member violates the rules, will the entire team be disqualified or just that member?
So that is a great question, Linda. I guess what I would say to that is we would first conduct our own investigation on the TraceLab side to figure out where that activity originated from. If it was from that one team, we would probably try to talk to them first and see if it was just one rogue team member or if all of the members of that team had knowledge of that. And really, depending on the severity of that violation of our rules, there might be, a second chance opportunity for them to continue on, but just showing us that they understand what they did was wrong. And if it wasn't with malicious intent or they didn't know they were violating the rules, then that might be something we can give a second chance to. However, if we see people, consciously going beyond our scope, so one example is they're trying to contact the family member of a missing person and all the team members are aware of this, or they continuously try to do that, that would be an example of a clear violation of our rules. And we would unfortunately have no choice but to disqualify them from the event and remove the team from the proceedings.
Great, thank you. That sounds fair enough. Another question, Adrian, do participants ever find out if a piece of OSINT helped to solve a case?
That is a really great question there, Linda. In some cases, when we investigate the cases that law enforcement gives us, they will from time to time provide our Trace Labs team with feedback on, if that was helpful or not. However, what we aren't usually able to do is share the specific details around that to the public. But we do have some news articles out there that do talk about our many successes. And one example is we actually wrapped up a really unique multinational effort child rescue operation we did a couple weeks ago with the National Child Protection Task Force. We had a few law enforcement agencies from around the world involved in that as well. And in that effort, we were actually able to identify 4 high-value targets throughout those investigations. And we were able to share that out through media outlets on that. But what we typically aren't able to do, just because of the privacy of some investigations, are share specifically what happened, just to respect the privacy of any victims involved or any suspects, and not interfere in any active law enforcement investigation.
Yeah, exactly right, Adrian. And that's been, again, one of the most common questions we've been asked in relation to the hackathon last year as to how did my contribution assist? Have we found anyone? Has it unlocked a case? And, we don't want to interfere with the law enforcement investigations. But what we have been able to get feedback from the relevant case officers is that out of the, I think it was 3,912 submissions that were provided last year during the hackathon, there was 40 brand new pieces of information that hadn't been uncovered by police in their investigation. What pieces of information? When we obviously aren't going to receive that feedback, but I think collectively it's great to know that there was an impact through last year's event. Adrian, just one more question for you as well. So in regards to participation and, a team's or a person's, workspace, their workstation, should they be using their own regular social media accounts to do their searches, or should they be creating test dummy accounts to hide their identity?
So definitely the latter on that, Linda. So with every OSINT investigation you conduct, you should always have a separate social media account. We commonly call this a sock puppet account. It stood up for the purpose of investigations. It's not tied to your personal identity, just meaning it doesn't have your own name and picture and such. I'd say for the type of investigations we're doing, you don't need to be as concerned about setting up that account with complete anonymity. So if you use your own, IP address at home to register with that would be fine. We're not really as concerned with Facebook knowing that you set up that account, but what we are concerned about is if you're using that account to look at a missing person's profile and maybe by accident you click like on one of the photos, we would definitely not want that to be tied to your personal name or any name associated to Trace Labs or any of our partners. That would be really the main reason why we'd want a sock puppet account to be used.
And if I may just add, Linda, for those that don't know, we do have an intro tutorial video on how to create sock puppet accounts on our Trace Labs YouTube channel. So if you have any questions in regards to how to get set up with sock puppets, that's a great place to get started. So that's the Trace Labs YouTube channel.
And we also have a dedicated Slack channel for sock puppets. So we have a lot of active investigations on those in our Trace Labs Slack group. It's just called, I think it's called Sock Puppet Questions. So if you really need help there setting up any accounts, that's the best place to go. We have thousands of people there actively talking about this stuff.
That's great advice. Thank you, Adrian and James. And it's very important to be safe, but also to not have an impact on the cases in which we're trying to generate leads for. Gents, I'm just going to hold off there for a moment. We'll move on to our team sub AU. Just before we do that, could I ask the team to pop up the second poll question in regards to why people participate in a Trace Labs CTF? So, gentlemen, Team Sub AU, couple of questions. Well, actually, there's probably a whole host of questions I have to ask, because I'm sure there's a whole host of information that people are going to want to know in regards to your participation and how you had achieved becoming a challenge winner last year. But could we just start off at the beginning? Could you give us some insight as to how you came across the National Missing Persons Hackathon 2019 and what made you participate?
Sure. So, sorry, I'll lead off on this one. So, March last year, we had one of our security and risk team did just finished doing KringleCon, and they relayed their effort, their experience in CTF, and then we suggested maybe we should step this up a bit and go for a more live CTF. It was about that time when the Vancouver Trace Labs event actually occurred at B-Sides. And that's where we got the inspiration. Hey, that'd be pretty cool if it came to Australia. And then lo and behold, during October, last year, the first event was run. So naturally, we all gravitated to that. So that's where we selected this team here that's currently in this panel, and we participated in that event.
Fabulous. I'm glad that we must have been in tune there with you, Adam, and the team in being able to bring Trace Labs across to Australia and conducting the CTF. So another question for you: what was your strategy going into the day? So you knew that there was going to be 12 missing person cases. Were you going to share that across the team? Were you going to all just hook into one case? How did you strategize for that day?
Okay, cool. So in the lead up, we did, admittedly, we didn't do very much strategizing prior. When we arrived, we saw the menu of the 12 people, and it was basically a decision there as we're at the table. Everyone just choose a person, make sure you choose someone different, and then we will rotate. We did have shared infrastructure set up between us. So we had a Google Docs or a Google account shared with a sock puppet amongst ourselves. And we use that for basically like a paste bin of sorts between ourselves. We also did use Slack so we could talk to each other and not talk too much out aloud, because we might be discussing something that someone else might overhear. It might send them down a red herring, and likewise for other team interactions. So really our strategy was just to divide the workload, and then we rotate every couple of hours. But also, in saying that, if someone got stuck, they could ask the rest of the team, hey, have you got something you can look at phone numbers, or can you do something with this? And then we could push that task out to someone else, and then they could continue on with what they were doing.
One of the benefits we found with that approach was that when we rotated to the next person, they had a different approach. So whilst, if Adam had been looking at someone, first of all, he may have found a lot of information. When we transfer that to someone else, by looking at it from a different direction, they found new and exciting things.
That's a great point, Andrew, and it's actually something I think that we discussed at the last webinar in regards to actually doing these hackathons and doing the CTFs, and how they actually assist law enforcement, in the sense that we have a brand new, fresh set of eyes of, several hundred people looking at these cases in a different way, through a different lens to police. And the fact that you've just demonstrated that you can do that within the team as well, having 3 or 4 different ways in which to search for that information, or to pivot from in different ways from bits of information that you find. So yeah, that's great. So in respect to that, what sort of advice are you happy to part with for those people that are looking or are participating this year and maybe doing it for the first time?
Okay, so definitely for new starters, communication amongst your team is very, very important, particularly when it comes to submitting artifacts or submissions. Being able to track who submitted what, because otherwise you may get frustrated if everyone submits the same Facebook account, but the rest of the team didn't know it. And then also it ties up the judges a bit as well. Having a shared document amongst yourselves, or being able to talk amongst yourselves directly, is also very beneficial for coordination.
So how do you think, I'll just do a follow-up question. So how do you think, last year we had in-person events. So those that were participating had a certain location. You had your team there with you, which allowed for that free-flowing conversation. How do you think that may, or having an online event this year, that may be impacted? Or do you think there's actually benefits to doing it on purely online this year?
Be different, I think. The access to resources and certainly the comfort level of other people in these challenges may affect it in a positive manner. The communication may become more difficult because you don't have the person sitting across you from the table. So being able to set up those lines of communication amongst your team in a very accessible manner would be very important in this particular event.
Yes, communication definitely is key, which actually I have a question for Adrian here. When a team member submits an entry, can the rest of the team view the submission to avoid any double ups being provided?
Yeah, absolutely, Linda. So actually on the homepage of our search party platform, if they look at one of the cases, there's actually a history of their submissions. If they click on the case, there's like a accepted, pending, and rejected section. So you can see what's been accepted, what hasn't been validated yet, and then what has been rejected as well. But I think the strategy that Adam talked about, having like a Google Doc or even a Google spreadsheet, might be more effective if you had like different columns set up for different categories and, you know, a tab for each case, so that someone could quickly Control F through that and find out if it's already there. I honestly think that is probably the best approach to seeing if it's a duplicate submission. And just further to that, something we actually see some people do is they set up a Trello board, a private Trello board between their team, where they can actually set up different cards, they call them, for different categories, and then have everyone dump all their intel in there and be able to see that in more of a visual manner than maybe a Google Doc or Google Sheet would provide. That's probably another tip I'd give teams.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, Adrian. Sorry, James?
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, I was also going to add, I think that being fully remote this year, it adds a benefit of being able to, like, I don't know, jump on a group call or something like that with your team, because you don't have to worry about people being around you, overhearing you guys verbally communicate. So, you know, I guess try and take advantage of that too, since we're all going to be fully remote for this one this year, this hackathon. Utilize like voice chats if possible with your team, just to get the communication going faster. You don't have to worry about people eavesdropping and stuff like that.
Great advice, James. Team, can I just ask that you pop up the results from our second poll, please? As I ask our team Saab another question, being, will you be participating this year again?
Yes, so this year we've changed, the team will be participating again. However, the team structure will be slightly different. 50% of the team will be changed out, and we'll have two new people put in, and that's just so we can give some more awareness to this, bring in some new skills, bring in some new talent. So yeah.
And I think just to jump in on the back of Adam, what we did last year with the team, we're replicating this year, in that the team was split essentially with an offensive and a defensive focus. So two of the team were from the consulting side of the house, so used a lot of the skills that they were using in when doing pen tests. So a lot of the open search research, trying to find information or vulnerabilities that could be used in a pen test, and the other half of the team were from our SecOps team. So very much a defensive focus, but still needing to utilize those critical research skills as part of the normal day-to-day business, doing investigations and both within the company, but also investigating sources of malware or other issues that they were discovering on the network. So the two different sort of focuses really complemented each other, and going back to what Andrew said, and getting a fresh set of eyes on a case as we went through, that really helped. And we, there were numerous instances where one of the team would sort of say, "Oh, I'm done. There's nothing. I can't find anything more on this, but this is what I've got," and giving a good handover to someone else, and straight away they'd be able to pick up and take it off in a different direction and find something new.
Fabulous. Ben, can I just ask you another question? Talking about the CTF being for 6 hours, it is a long time, particularly when you need to remain focused. How did you get through? How did you and the team get through that 6 hours? Was it all, you know, from my perspective, would have been coffee, but was it your Red Bull? Was it chocolate? Was it, how did you get through that time period?
We were really lucky, and probably all around the country, but Paula and the, you know, the AustCyber crew here in Adelaide catered for the event really well. So we didn't have to, you know, get out of our chairs or do too much. There were people coming around with food and drinks. Some of us, Adam, did not move, you know, for the full 6 hours, and probably would have stayed there for another 8 hours afterwards. But I assumed the responsibility of just making sure the team was watered and fed and could focus on going on. But I mean, that, you know, that what was so good about last year's event as well, in that, you know, it was a collaborative, exciting environment to be in and well catered for. We literally did not have to get out of our chair for the full, you know, 6, 7, 8 hours that we were there.
Fabulous to hear. Look, I didn't participate, but I was obviously there facilitating the event at the Canberra venue, and I have to say I was dead at the end of the day. So I can just imagine what it felt like for you guys being so focused for that full 6 hours. And actually, can I throw this out to the Trace Labs team? Because actually witnessing you guys last year, going through this process for the 6 hours, doing your participant briefing, and then getting online, providing advice to the contestants, providing advice to the judges, helping with the submission of the OSINT coming through from the teams. How do you keep yourself energized and engaged through that 6 hours and plus for you?
Oh, that's a great question, Linda. I think personally for me, it's combination of the coffee, the excitement, seeing everything all come together after. I know for last year's hackathon, we had months of planning with you. So seeing everything come together, that was just enough to keep me going alone. I maybe only had 1 or 2 cups of coffee, maybe less than my usual amount. I'm not sure, Rob and James, if you had anything different.
Yeah, I would say you have to absolutely love it, right? Because it does get tough. But if you absolutely love it, it just pushes you to do it, right? You don't think about it. You love what you do, and it energizes you. As Adrian said, like being able to see it all kind of come together and come to life was absolutely amazing. And then that was enough to keep us going throughout the day. Also, I just wanted to second that the event was extremely well catered. So I'm sure that had something to do with it too.
Yeah, Linda, I would just add to that, all great points. I think the other thing for me is it's a team event. So you're in there with other people, you're all helping each other, and it's on the back end as well, right? On the Trace Lab side, we're all doing our part. We're all working hard to keep it moving. And you see other people working really hard, 6 hours plus the time afterwards to do the reports and things like that. And just a huge effort on the side of the community. So you see that and you think, you know, I can't let them down. We have to keep going. And so I think that really keeps you at the table, to see the dedication from everybody else, and you just don't want to let people down. So I think that's the other big component that I see a lot.
And I think,
go, Adrian.
Sorry, just going to add one last point to that. I think we talked about how the CTF itself is 6 hours in length. And when we actually first started out, I don't know if anyone knows about this, but we actually did a 2-day CTF in Vegas. I know, Rob, you were there on the ground. We did 2 full days.
Yeah,
it kept running the whole time. I don't think you slept. We were all doing shifts.
Crazy.
But I think we learned very quickly that running this like a typical hackathon where they run 1 or 2 days straight is really not feasible, just because of the nature of the investigations and everything that goes into it, the mental health aspect as well. To spend more than 6 hours, I think 6 hours is even long enough looking at a missing persons case. So that's really why we don't extend it to a typical hackathon length, for those of you in the audience who've been wondering.
No, and that makes perfect sense, you know, and I think this phrase came from you guys in regards to post-CTF fatigue. You could actually see that at the end of the 6 hours where people were just so drained, but at the same time were so energized in the fact that they had participated in this and they felt that they had accomplished some good. So just in regards to the poll that we had previously was why people participate in a TraceLab CTF, and the outright winner was I support their mission in finding missing persons, and a close second is to learn OSINT skills. So again, that just validates why you have such a great community and such a great following, as well as the interest in the National Missing Persons Hackathon that we have as well. Team, could I just ask for the last poll to be placed up as I move to James and ask you a question in relation to how, and we'll specifically focus on the National Missing Persons Hackathon here. How do you see this hackathon differing at all from your usual search party CTFs in regards to its delivery, in regards to the OSINT generated that our participants? Is there any visible difference?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Linda. And how I would kind of answer that is Australia has been the first nation, I guess, to do this type of event on a national scale. And it's something that we've never really seen before, especially with our global search party events, right? We work with multiple agencies and multiple contestants from all over the world. But with the National Missing Persons Hackathon, what we see support coming in from private sector, from public sector, and it all comes together in a very streamlined fashion to really put this hackathon on and in such an amazing way. So it's truly an experience that you can only have here with the National Missing Persons Hackathon, and it's just amazing. Like the national scale, Australia being the first ones to kind of do this, it's the key differentiating factor with this hackathon.
So going to that, Adrian, can I ask you, what were your thoughts? Like I remember, you know, when I came across TraceLabs through an article, and, you know, down the track, it was still sticking in the back of my mind, you know, the fabulous work that you're doing, and, you know, very much was engaged with your mission. What did you think when you received the email from AustCyber going, hey, would you like to come across to Australia and help us develop a countrywide event?
Well, first I'll say, Linda, is we get a lot of emails, and I'd say we get a lot of emails asking about partnership opportunities like that. But when that email from you came in that day or evening, it was a little bit different than what we were usually getting. You kind of talked about the opportunity there, what you had in mind, and you structured it very well. And it just seemed like a really interesting opportunity for us to pursue and to really bring TraceLabs to an international scale, because before that, we were mainly doing events in North America. And when we saw you reach out, we said, you know what, we definitely have to explore this. I think we exchanged probably 3 or 4 emails before we got on a call, and I think things moved very quickly from then. But just want to say we really appreciate you being that one to reach out and really start all this with a National Missing Persons Hackathon. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with you, AustCyber, and AFP, and the whole Australian group there.
No, thank you. If it wasn't for you guys actually saying yes to that email, we wouldn't be where we are today. So no, that's fabulous. Look, Team Sub AU, question here for you. Is there a favourite OSINT tool amongst your team members?
I'll answer this one. So last year we didn't really have a tool in mind. It was just it was very Google intensive, but we did do a lot of pivoting around. As for now, still learning, still understanding how Google works and how you can exclude and include things, particularly around filtering out search results by date, particularly because once someone goes missing, there's a lot of things that talk about missing after their last date seen. However, if you can filter it to everything before they go missing, then you've got a relatively cleaner set of events before the event. So you can have some better results out of that. As for the use of tools such as Maltego in the Australian context, it is quite difficult to use one of those that particular application or applications like it, because they're usually built around the US context of an identity. So tools, Google, a document of some sort to document your findings, to try and categorize things as you go before you submit them. So then you'll have a higher quality submission.
That's great advice, Adam. Yes, there's so many software programs and tools available out there, and I think a lot of them also work on being able to create that engagement cluster as well, which we spoke about at the last webinar with Chris Poulter. So there's a variety of tools that people can actually use, but as you said, and as Adrian mentioned before, that Google Doc is very much important. Another question that's come out, and I'll throw this out to everyone, is what's the advice for the people participating as individuals in the hackathon versus if you were participating as a team?
Find a team. I think there's so much there's so much power in collaboration, but I think as individuals, just being really well prepared and having likewise having a way to record the information that you're finding and having a bit of a strategy of how you're going about it, because say for example there are another 12 missing persons, and if you start setting up all your search engines trying to focus on 3 or 4 at a time, you're going to go down a lot of different rabbit holes and not necessarily find that really valuable, that piece of OSINT. So just being really focused in what you're doing, but maybe finding a forum, maybe finding some other people to collaborate with and bounce ideas off would be really valuable.
In saying that, however, I did do the Hawaii CTF as an individual. So that was over April this year, over the Easter long weekend. Now you could do it individually, but you're probably not going to get as many points, but you'll still get the same experience. But even so, documenting what you're submitting and how the information in your sources is also very important in that as well.
I would just add maybe one more tip, and this is maybe beyond just individual teams. Definitely test your sock puppet accounts before the start of the CTF. What we've actually heard is some people successfully set them up prior, but then for some reason, Facebook or Twitter has some algorithm that identified you as a likely sock puppet, and they will burn your account just because of that. So trying to set it up from scratch on the day of or at the start of the event might be a bit difficult. So definitely just doing a cursory look over your tools and accounts before you get started would be my best advice.
Yep. So the Trace Labs YouTube has got some good advice on that. There's also other podcasts that I think some of you guys are involved with from OSINT Curious about sock puppet creation. They've got some really good advice there about how you set them up and how you set them up in a manner or a method that will prevent them from being detected or prevent them from being burnt straight away. If no one was aware of it, or if you do use it, things like thispersondoesnotexist.com can actually be detected because the face has a very similar pose, but by playing with some filters with that profile picture before you add it to your profile on Facebook or your sock puppet on Facebook can actually defeat that.
Fabulous advice. So sock puppet, Google Docs, find a team. If I can just throw to you, Adrian, because we've got like 1 minute left. You can use the Slack community that Trace Labs has to be able to find a team rather than participate as an individual. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a National Missing Persons Hackathon channel set up specifically for that purpose, where there's a lot of people looking for teams there. So if you're still a free agent and someone else is, definitely sync up through that channel. That's, I believe, National Aust 2020 in our Trace Lab Slack group.
Fabulous. Gents, I think we have about 30 seconds left before 11 o'clock. Results of the last poll. This is the information that I find really interesting because it's all about digital footprints from me from a data and privacy perspective. 51% people have stated, I have posted too much personal information. 49% aren't concerned about what they have posted. Almost, well, basically a 50-50 split in regards to way in which people are viewing their digital footprint out there. So to our audience, this brings us to the end of our webinar for today. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Commonwealth Bank and Telstra, for supporting us in this event. Obviously, big thank yous, kisses and hugs to Rob, Adrian and James for yet again being part of this, being part of our webinar. It is certainly a shame that you can't make it out again here this year. It definitely was an experience last year, but we're going to make it a bigger and better experience online this year. And also to Team Saab AU, Adam, Andrew, Ben and Luke. Really looking forward to the new Team Saab AU this year. And again, thank you so much for sharing your insights. This will be recorded. It will be, or is recorded, will be available on the AustCyber YouTube channel. And we do have another webinar, our last webinar, same time next week, where we'll be discussing OSINT. But from a USA perspective, we will have 4 CEOs and presidents of OSINT and cybersecurity and mission-orientated companies discussing OSINT from their perspective. Again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Trace Labs. Thank you, Team Saab AU. Very much appreciated. And we will see you on the 29th of October. Thank you.
Looking forward to it, Linda.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
Hey, Zoom webinar wave.